The executive conference room at Pacific Trust and Banking gleamed with polished mahogany as my family gathered for what they believed was a routine annual review of our family trust portfolio. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the financial district, where skyscrapers housed the kind of wealth management firms that my family thought they belonged among after 5 years of living like inherited millionaires. I sat quietly at the far end of the conference table, watching Mom flip through wedding planning magazines while discussing my sister Rachel's upcoming $400,000 celebration. The event had evolved into a 3-day extravaganza complete with imported French flowers, a Michelin-starred chef, and accommodations for 200 guests at a luxury resort in Napa Valley. The vineyard deposit cleared beautifully, Mom announced to Dad and my brother Tyler, her voice carrying the satisfaction of someone whose financial worries had been permanently solved by what she believed was Grandpa's generous estate planning. Rachel deserves every bit of this celebration. It's exactly what the trust was established to support. Rachel herself glowed with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned the source of her family's wealth, scrolling through photos of designer wedding gowns that cost more than most people's annual salaries. At 26, she'd built her entire adult life around the assumption that family money would always be available for her dreams, working sporadically as a lifestyle blogger while maintaining expenses that would require six-figure income. Grandpa's investment strategy was truly remarkable, Dad agreed, adjusting his expensive watch as he reviewed documents that he believed represented our family's diversified portfolio. Real estate, technology stocks, international bonds. He understood wealth preservation decades before it became standard practice. The fictional grandfather whose estate supposedly funded our lifestyle had become increasingly sophisticated over the years. They'd created elaborate stories about his business empire to explain the regular transfers that appeared in family accounts with mechanical precision. None of them had ever asked to see actual trust documentation or questioned why a 31-year-old software architect had been appointed to manage millions in inherited assets. Sophie's been absolutely brilliant with the account management, Tyler added, directing a grateful smile toward me. The monthly distributions have been perfectly calibrated to support everyone's needs while maintaining capital growth. Grandpa chose the right person to handle his legacy. What my family didn't know was that I'd been systematically liquidating my retirement accounts, investment portfolios, and savings to fund their luxury lifestyle for 5 years. My income as a senior software architect at a Fortune 500 company had been substantial, but not substantial enough to support multiple six-figure expenditures annually while they lived like trust fund beneficiaries. The trust fund was my financial suicide, executed monthly through transfers that had depleted nearly $800,000 of carefully accumulated wealth while they celebrated inherited prosperity that had never existed. The European honeymoon is going to be incredible, Rachel continued, showing photos of 5-star hotels and private yacht charters. 6 weeks touring France, Italy, and Greece with private guides and exclusive access. It's exactly the kind of sophisticated travel that reflects our family's values. The honeymoon would cost another $120,000, money they expected me to transfer from the trust without question, just like I'd been doing for Rachel's apartment, her car, her designer wardrobe, and her previous luxury vacations. Tomorrow they'd learn that trust funds require actual documentation, legal structures, and legitimate sources of wealth, none of which existed in our family's fictional financial arrangement. The week leading up to our banking review had unfolded with the same entitled expectations that had characterized my family's financial relationship for 5 years. Morning calls from Mom about portfolio adjustments needed for wedding vendors. Afternoon texts from Rachel about honeymoon upgrades that required additional funding. Evening conversations with Dad about investment opportunities that would leverage our inherited capital. None of them had questioned why their trust fund manager lived in a modest apartment while they occupied luxury homes, or why our supposed financial advisor never attended family meetings, or why trust documentation was perpetually under legal review whenever they asked to see official papers. Sophie, we need to discuss accelerating the spring distributions, Dad announced during our traditional Sunday family brunch at the country club he'd joined using what he believed was inherited money. Rachel's wedding vendors are demanding payment schedules that require more liquidity than we typically maintain in operating accounts. I stared at my eggs Benedict, calculating the impossibility of what they were requesting. My savings accounts had been emptied months ago. My investment portfolios had been liquidated to fund Tyler's startup venture that consisted of a luxury office space and elaborate business plans with no actual revenue. My retirement accounts had been raided to pay for Mom's boutique consulting firm that had never acquired a single client. How much additional liquidity? I asked, knowing the answer would exceed my remaining credit limits and emergency funds. About $600,000, Rachel replied casually as if discussing dinner plans. The venue requires final payment, the catering needs deposits, and we decided to upgrade the accommodations for out-of-town guests. Plus the honeymoon bookings need to be secured. $600,000 represented more than I could access through any legitimate means, yet they requested it with the confidence of people who believed they were managing abundant inherited wealth rather than systematically destroying their daughter's financial security. The trust can certainly accommodate special circumstances, Mom agreed, consulting her planner where she'd been tracking various family expenses that she assumed were funded by Grandpa's estate. After all, wedding celebrations and family milestones are exactly what these funds were intended to support. Tyler nodded approvingly while discussing his own plans for expanding his fake business with additional trust capital. His commercial real estate venture existed primarily in expensive office space and professional marketing materials, funded by money he believed came from inherited family wealth rather than his sister's sacrificed financial future. Family wealth management requires thinking beyond immediate needs. Dad lectured with the authority of someone who'd never actually managed wealth. Grandpa established these funds specifically to ensure that future generations could pursue opportunities without financial constraints. The irony that their financial constraints had been eliminated by imposing financial destruction on their daughter was lost on them entirely. They'd spent 5 years living without consequences while I accumulated debt and depleted assets to maintain their fiction of inherited prosperity. But tomorrow's banking review would involve someone who actually understood trust fund documentation. Margaret Stevens, Senior Vice President of Fraud Investigation at Pacific Trust and Banking, had been reviewing our family's financial arrangements for 2 weeks and had requested this meeting to discuss her findings with all account holders present. They thought they were meeting their wealth manager. Instead, they were about to meet someone who specialized in exactly the kind of financial exploitation they'd been perpetrating unknowingly for half a decade. The conference room fell silent as Margaret Stevens entered with 2 associates and a stack of documents that looked nothing like the portfolio reports my family had been expecting. Her expression carried the gravity of someone who'd spent 15 years investigating financial crimes, and the folders she carried contained evidence of systematic fraud that would permanently alter our family's understanding of their wealth. "Thank you for coming," Stevens began, her voice carrying federal authority that made Dad's confident smile waver slightly. "I'm Margaret Stevens, Senior Vice President of Fraud Investigation. This meeting concerns serious irregularities in your family's financial arrangements that require immediate resolution." Mom's wedding planning magazines remained forgotten as Stevens opened her first folder with the precision of someone presenting criminal evidence. "Our comprehensive audit has revealed that no trust fund exists. No grandfather's estate. No inherited wealth. No investment portfolio generating the substantial distributions your family has been receiving for 5 years." The silence that followed was deafening. Rachel's honeymoon planning materials slipped from her hands as she processed the impossibility of what she was hearing. Tyler's business expansion plans became suddenly irrelevant as his funding source evaporated in real time. "Every dollar funding your lifestyle," Stevens continued with devastating clarity, "has come from Sophie Patterson's personal accounts. Her salary, investment portfolios, retirement savings, and accumulated wealth have been systematically transferred to fund expenses you believed were covered by inherited family money." She activated the wall screen and displayed 5 years of financial records showing the devastating pattern. My direct deposits flowing immediately to family accounts while they spent money they thought belonged to them through generational wealth that had never existed. "The total amount involved exceeds $847,000, Stevens' associate announced. "Sophie has funded luxury homes, expensive cars, private education, business ventures, and wedding planning while accumulating substantial debt to maintain her own basic living expenses." Dad's authority as family patriarch crumbled as he realized his financial expertise had been applied to spending his daughter's money rather than managing inherited assets. Mom's wedding planning became impossible to continue as she understood the true cost of Rachel's celebration. This represents one of the most comprehensive cases of financial exploitation we've encountered, Stevens concluded. Sophie has been systematically impoverished to fund a lifestyle her family believed was their inheritance. The trust fund had always been my financial destruction, disguised as family wealth management. Now everyone finally knew the truth about where their money had actually been coming from for 5 years. 8 months later, I received confirmation that my financial recovery plan was complete. The fraud investigation had resulted in asset seizures and payment schedules that would restore most of my stolen wealth over the next decade, while my family learned to live on legitimately earned income for the first time in 5 years. Rachel's wedding had been cancelled when vendors discovered the deposits were funded through financial exploitation rather than inherited wealth. Her lifestyle blogger career ended when her luxury content became impossible to maintain without stolen funding. She now works retail, learning what earned income actually feels like. Dad's country club membership was revoked when other members learned his lifestyle was funded through family fraud. Tyler's business venture collapsed immediately once his fictional capital disappeared. Mom's boutique consulting firm closed when she could no longer afford the expensive office space that had given it credibility. They'd moved into a modest apartment, finally experiencing the financial constraints that normal families navigate without exploiting their children's savings. The luxury cars, designer clothing and expensive vacations were gone once their funding source was exposed and terminated. I'd purchased a house with my restored savings, where I now work as a financial consultant helping other high earners protect themselves from family exploitation. The experience taught me that real family celebrates your success rather than stealing its benefits. Trust funds require actual trust, something my family had never bothered to earn or maintain.